My achievements is basically qualified as a fashion designer back in the 80s, and that was quite challenging because you did a lot of work, pattern cutting, sewing. A lot of the students that were on the courses, they used to get the machinists to sew this stuff together, but I was never like that. I wanted to know how to make my own garments, so I would always ask questions, and that's one of the things that I've always done in life, is to always ask questions and then progress from there. So doing the fashion, I did various fashion shows, went into business as well with a couple of friends, but unfortunately became ill along the way. But illness doesn't stop me. You get up and you fight again. And I carried on with fashion, and then I got caught up in the community hub where we did the carnival, working with young people as well. So there's lots of things that I've done, but sometimes you don't want to sort of talk about yourself because you think, oh, it's not important. But reflecting, I have achieved a lot of things along the way. So that is it, basically. The name that we functioned under was Sangento, so it was Sandra, Jennifer and Tony. Unfortunately, Jennifer's passed away, but we did the show at Westwood Street, so that was 1984, so obviously young, you've got your ideas, and the theme for the fashion show at that time was going away on holiday. But so we worked around doing the costumes for that. We had skiing, cold climate, hot weather. So we had some of the models in bikinis and swimming costumes. But we had we told a story basically. That was what it was all about. So it started off with them being at the airport. So everybody's going to their different destinations. Some went to a hot, cold. So we actually did a skiing scene where the models sort of did the skiing instead of just walking on and showing the costumes. The beach scene, we were playing beach ball and things like that. We had other sections where it was trying to remember now because up in age, where we had a party scene. So there was one of the models, the male models, he was in love with one of the women. So he's come on the stage, he's drunk, but the people understood, they followed the storyline. So at the end now, basically of the fashion show, you've got the evening scene and we've got a bridal scene. So this particular model that the drunken man was in love with, he's at the background and he's like this staggering about and he's come on. So it was a lovely venture, and I'd like to do something like that again, because it's a story. It's not just running on stage and running off. It's a lot of hard work, but also you get people that come from the background and the behind the scenes people, and they always help out. So I've done many fashion shows, but that was one of my main enjoyable ones, my first ever show. I didn't start the carnival work till probably about in the 90s, because at that time I had a young child, then I had a young daughter. So obviously you're sort of working on bringing up your child and finding what work you can do. But I worked around it, you know what I mean? I got on with what I had to do. Carnival, when I went into the carnival, it was basically the same old community thing where they're arguing and going on with themselves instead of working together and getting on with what you've got to do. But I just did my work and I enjoyed it because you get to work with a lot of the young people, and the young people, they always want to, they like dancing, they like to dress up. So that's a nice side of it. It's just when you get the elders, when you think, well, come on, guys, be realistic. Let's move on. You're teaching these young people, and that's what it's about. Well, I worked a lot with Basil Gums. He's got the Caribbean shipping agency on Great Western Street. So we used to do a lot of stuff together. Um, we created the Mass 2000 project, and that fell on the May bank holiday because obviously they took the carnival away from that actual day because of weather and other circumstances. So we created this bank holiday event, and it was more for the younger element of the community where we did talent shows for them. That was to boost the confidence, you know, to show them that you could come out and do things. Um, we did various things. We had things for the younger children, like games and things like that. But over the years, other people come along, they want to take over. So they took over and we backed away because Basil had a concept of where he wanted to go into the main carnival but be more of a part of a steering group than what we have now today. You know, like be constructive and forthright in what you're doing, because that's not, there's nothing in the community no more that's, well, I would say we haven't got leaders and we need them, or people that we can look up to as mentors. Mrs. Brandy, she'd done something at St James's Church on Prince's Road, and she'd asked for some information about the old mosque side. So I did a little bit of a project for Black History Month where I got some pictures of the old Alexander Road and the old Prince's Road. And I also wrote a little story about, you know, when the West Indians come from the Caribbean, what that was like. So I wrote that my father came to England first, and obviously my mum stayed at home and I was at home in Barbados. So basically the story is that a lot of the West Indians came and they left the kids behind or the wives and came and got accommodation. But part of it was coming here, the hub of the old mosque side, the community. We used to have the community centre and the old markets, and everybody meet up on a Saturday because you've only gone out for half an hour. 2 hours later, you haven't come back from the shopping because you're having this big community. You know, you're chatting away and things like that. So doing that project, I wrote the story about coming to England, and it was just nice. It was just nice to do that. Well, the first time I ever met Louise, she interviewed me for a job that I'd applied for. So it was the census enumerator. So she interviewed me for that particular job. But as part of, even though after the interview, Louise was still my mentor because I had to report back to her with me doing, you know, collecting the census and all that. I had to report back to her. So during that time, Louise put a question to me and she said, well, I'm involved with a task force, but we want to start this women's organisation. We have had talks about it. So she said, would you be interested? So I thought, why is she asking me this question? But Louise being Louise, she saw something within me that she thought she needs to bring out. And that is what she did. She invited me along as a board member. So I think I joined the board in '92. I can't remember, basically. But she was my inspiration, and she was always, she wouldn't tell you, she'd guide you. Right, that's one thing about Louise. She'd guide you down the road. But as I say, I always had that insight in me where I'd ask questions and Louise would answer. So in that time, I joined the board, but I sat there like a little quiet mouse. But she saw some form of potential in me, and being within the organisation, your skills grow and your confidence comes out. And I think with the launch with the forum, '93, the official launch, because we'd got the building on Prince's Road for the women's, well, it was Mushwaf at that time, and then it became the Women's Action Forum. So I think within 3 years after being there, I ended up being Louise's chairperson because nobody else wanted the job. So poor old Tony's got this job now of being chairperson. But Louise would always, come on, Tony, we're going, because I didn't like to go to some of the meetings and things like that. You're going, sort of thing. Come on, Tony. But she sort of guide you along and say, look, come on, you need to learn. And that's what she did. And she's a brilliant educator. You know, loved her to the maximum. I don't know what more I can say about her, but she was a lovely lady. Lovely. I think when I started with the education, no, because it'd be about partway in the 90s, somewhere in the 90s, but I wasn't working then, so I went on Judy Craven. She was doing a course, Women's Return to Education, so it was Make Your Experience Count. So I joined that course. So Judy, being like another Mrs. Da-Cocodia, basically, in the background, she sort of said, come on, Tony, you can teach this course. So that's the first thing I did. I did passing on my skills now to other women, make your experience count, get them out of the house, just write about your life history, basically, little elements of it. And that's the first thing I ever taught. And then they were looking for a fashion teacher at Greenhays on Great Western Street. So the course I was teaching, Make Your Experience, was at Greenhays, so I happened to see the job advertised and I applied for it. And I started teaching. It was just basic, I think it was just basic dressmaking, or make your, dressmaking and fashion. So that's what I did. And I stayed there till 2007, but I did 1 year I was doing free exam course. I was teaching free exam courses. So it was like, oh my God. So we had pattern cutting, because I qualified in pattern cutting from my own experience at learning. Then we had the beginners. Then we were teaching some Somalian women, so there was an element of teaching them English as well, even though they were supposed to have language support. So I used to do the programs, set it up, simplistics, drawings for them. So that is basically what I did. And that was an experience in itself, but I think I qualified in 2000, because at the time when I went into teaching, I wasn't qualified as a teacher. So I did my teaching, I got my teaching certificate in 2001, I think it was. And then I left teaching in 2007 because they were downsizing, basically, but they weren't telling the truth, as they do. And I just thought I'd leave, but I wanted to do something within the community, but it never obviously materialised at that particular time because of sort of personal things that happened. The community is fractured because I think outside influences because we've got people coming in from different areas and communities. So I think outside elements are trying to create a division between whoever's in the area. So I just think that basically we need to work together because, as I say, I worked with the first set of Somalian women that came to England, and when I say they enjoyed their classes, they respected me, I respected them, I respected their religion that they had. Now, this politically correctness that they've brought out into the open does not need to be there, because religion, I respect your religion, you respect mine, but as I say, they've put a division between us and people can't see where it's coming from. They think it's coming from this person over there or that person. It's political. It's all political orientated. That's the way I feel. So I try and work with people when people come off with, well, the black people don't do this and do that. It's not a matter of the black people don't do this and do that. They do not stick together. They have too much mouth. If you have something to say, go out there to the wider world and put it out there to the challenge. Don't sit down on a chair and say, if only this, that community's doing that. All right? You go out there, you've got the mouth, start something going. Don't worry about what Tom over there's saying. Be proactive in what you've got, right? That's why we can't move on, because there's too much tittle-tattle, right? The way I look at life right now, I want to go back out there and work with my people, but I get disheartened because I think, well, who am I going to work with? Who can I trust? Do I work within my family because I can trust my family? But I've got to be out there with other people, so I've got to find these people to work with. It's about being truthful. That's the way I look at life, and you've got to challenge things. You can't stand back and say, well, this happened. All right, that happened 20 years ago. This is now time to move forward. Come out of down there, go up there, please. That's all I want. Before I leave this earth, I'd like to see something constructive going on within my community. No stupidness. No stabbing that man in the back over there because he's gone forward and he's making his life better. We all can make our lives better. But sometimes as an individual, you cannot do it on your own. Sometimes you have to come together and do it as a team. I think it needs to come back, because when I look at all the things that the forum did, we touched on a lot of things: education, women into work, women into construction. We dealt a lot with the Montserratan community because a lot of them came through our doors, and we helped assist them in getting certain things that they needed. At that time, funds were flowing, but obviously you've got to access certain funds, and then it becomes difficult if you don't have a fundraiser within the organisation. So the last stages of the forum basically is that we'd open the Children's Paradise Nursery with the idea of incorporating other elements into having the nursery. But due to funding, I mean, it's the little organisations that do a lot of work, but they don't seem to be funded enough. And because I didn't know about funding myself, I don't know the criteria, so there's nothing much I could do. So unfortunately, the organisation had to fold. But there is money out there, but it's just because you're not in the know, you don't know where to go. So I think there's sides of life that we need to take on board and make sure that that money's there, and make sure the sustainability of anything that you set up can run for a long time. Because I think one of the downsides of the Women's Forum is I don't think when it was set up they were expecting it to run for so long. There are lessons. There's lessons that have been learned, but there's more lessons to be learned. And I feel that instead of going off ad hoc about things, sit down and sort of, sometimes you need to dissect things, go back to something and look at it, and then see where you can progress with it. I believe there are a lot of funds out there, but obviously it's working together to get the funds, not one person and God doing it, because sometimes you find that one person will chase the money, but then the others will come along and say, well, I've done this and done that, and you've done nothing, right? It's working as a team to get forward, and that's what we need. Seriously need that. I'd like to do the fashion side of things, but also I'd like to do a bit of mentoring, because some of our young people, I'm not going to just say the women alone, but I think sometimes we need to involve the men, or the young men, right? I've always said in the past that we should have had a men's forum, right? But going back to what you've just asked me, I feel that I'd like to mentor as well and pass on some of my upbringing skills that I had from my parents, because a little thing such as please and thank you takes you a long way, and I find that some people don't have that. Just those two simple things within them. There are a lot of ideas that I've got, but as I say, I want to sort of sit down and think about them. I don't want to talk about them because sometimes when you talk about things, they don't happen. So one thing I need to do is just settle myself because of, as I say, I've been ill. So that's one of my main priorities, to get well. Second priority is to sort of sit down and put pen to paper of what I really want to see going on, because sometimes I get frightened of what's happening out there. Do I want to go out and challenge it again? But I feel I must, because even though I say I'm not going to do it, I know I'm going to end up out there helping, because I think we need that boost within our community. Get other people involved that my age group, probably bring younger ones on board, because we need a balance, and just go from there.